I think an interesting discussion is GPT-4. What happened last week in the announcements, and then the tsunami, the slew, the flotilla, whatever nautical expression you want to use, of GPTs that are being created, and what that means. So,
It's really an unlock. There's this what seems to be some sort of a democratization of the ability to create a chatbot grounded in some information that you think is important, and then also wrapped in there is this infusion of the ability to chat not just in language but also with images, and inclusion of code as well. So like a spin up of a private temporary sandbox, and then this culmination of these things together created this fascinating world where anybody can go in and anybody could create a chatbot to do whatever they wish to do with it. Yeah, that's this hasn't existed before, or has it? What is this related to? What does this feel like to you?
it feels like the first time I said, by the way, do you realize what the internet will allow you to run apps? And you're like, hang on, so the internet is like brochures on the web. What do you mean run apps? You can do stuff. It's that.
Yeah.
And our CTO actually walked into a product management meeting and tore up all the roadmaps.
Physically? These are printed copies?
Some of the things you were working on are now that infrastructure we don't need to build. That is already in place. The stuff we did at the weekend, just playing around at the weekend with what you can do with. So let me, for the people listening, there's two things happening here. One is GPT has suddenly opened up all these new capabilities via their APIs, so therefore you can embed them inside applications. But you can also build your own apps, and as you say, you can give it access to your unique content. So, but you're limited in terms of the content you can give it, as in if you're building a public app. But if you're an ISV and you're using the APIs, you've got access to all the content that you would normally that you have access, your application has access to. You're not limited by the stuff that you give it as the starting point. And here's an example: the field called stage, which is obviously quite a complicated field of opportunity. Can you tell me how long it will take to update all the things that are attached to it, associated with it, that are dependent on it, if I make a change? And it came back and said 97 hours. And I went, okay, how did you do that? Well, it knows all the dependencies. It knows the complexity of each of those dependent items, the flows, the reports, the apex, because Elements has calculated the complexity. We gave it an assessment of if it's complex and it's this sort of metadata type, it's likely to take this long. And he went, okay, I've got it from here. And then we started playing with how little can you ask it? So he said, flows, the word flows. And it came back and it went, well, I can tell you what a flow is, but by the way, do you realize you have this many flows of this level of complexity? And actually, like, wow. And then
yeah, I think
produce that as a bar chart. Okay, I've got it. I got that covered. So I think we're at the stage now going, we're not quite sure what it can do. Then the question is like, how accurate is it? Well, it's not making stuff up. It's not looking at the internet. It's not guessing. It's driving its code run off a data set. That's, I think, what's exciting is suddenly all that infrastructure we were about to go and build, it's there.
And that's such a critical point in my opinion, because there are several that are already building infrastructure or were working on building infrastructure. And like you mentioned with your the ripping up of the papers in the beginning earlier, that's happening all over the place. I think I know from even like just AI force training, from a training perspective, the way in which I go about creating material to train, the way in which I go about performing training. Like one of the first thoughts I had this morning when I was working inside some of the chatbots that I was testing out was, is this not almost an even just a brand new training platform? Don't we all come to these chatbots to learn
Yeah.
Like that's part of what we do, right? We're trying to accomplish tasks, but at the same time, we're learning things. And does this platform, could it not even just exist as a training platform all on its own? And that kind of blew my mind. So I went down some rabbit holes thinking about, how all that plays out. Imagine this learning journey where you show up and there's this, terrible mountain of information that you have to learn, that you have to walk through to understand these, whatever the concepts are. Salesforce administrator, for example, there's just this mountain of things, and there are all these trails and paths that are pre-carved based on what everyone else thinks is the perfect way to go about learning this thing. But everybody comes to a specific learning data set where you're going to learn a thing with different backgrounds, with different history, with different experience. And how amazing would it be is if you inserted your profile and you said, here's who I am, here's my past experience. And the GPT already has the mountain of information it knows you have to learn. And then it takes you on a journey that's personalized.
But also your learning style. You may learn, you learn in different ways. I mean, I play bass, but I've had several bass players. I've now found an awesome bass teacher who teaches me the way I need to learn. And I think that's the really interesting thing, which is, can it pick up on your learning style? Right. And again, it's almost if you've got this body of knowledge out there. I think we need to be careful, though, which is not taking it too broad. I think this works well in a narrow focus. If you said, tell me everything about Salesforce, it's like, yeah, okay. You can't build a bot or give it enough information, but narrow it down and go, it's an org analysis bot. It's a flow bot, maybe. I don't know, I'm making these up, but picking a narrower scope. So quite an interesting narrow scope is there a Mark Good chatbot? Is there?
There is not. Well, maybe there should be.
There was an Ian Gotts one from yesterday.
Tell us about the Ian Gotts chatbot.
I gave it the books I've written. I gave it the transcripts from a bunch of podcasts I've done. And I started asking it questions, and it wasn't far off. It's got my slightly quirky style. But it's called Ian Gotts Ask Me Anything. And fascinating where we're going with this, which is if you could ask Mark Good anything about what he knows about AI, I can either try and grab you, get you on the phone, or why can't I just ask your bot on your behalf?
Right.
And then I get all the general questions out, and then I want to dig in. Maybe I'll set a call up with you. This is the time, I think, the people who are the creators, the people who've got the knowledge, the content, we've suddenly got a platform to make all this available. It's a distribution platform, but a really interactive one rather than listen to my podcast, read my blog. No, have a discussion based on the blog content or based on the presentation content.
Right. Yeah, it's a brand new way of looking at things. Talking about the content, I think a lot about content creation and what creators have to do to make content. And I see these GPT apps as it's just going to shake up the entire way that we do business from a content creation standpoint. And then like you said, if you've got your own bot that knows you, plus other things that you think are important that you infuse it with, well, now you've got almost just this standalone content creator on a specific topic. It's just really endless. It's almost like the internet sliced and diced in all different kinds of ways, niched down into specific core areas that you have interest in. It's like when ChatGPT rolled out and we were able to do this question and answer, and then we realized prompt engineering was important, and then it expanded and we realized we can use it for actual real world things. That was all a big deal. But now with the apps and the ability to niche down into core areas, but actually get good core niche results out of the app, as opposed to what is just the generic ChatGPT.
Yeah.
It really changes everything. As speaking for Salesforce professionals and those who are just doing, running their day jobs as a Salesforce professional and managing orgs and whatnot, there's going to be so many different apps that you're going to touch on every day. They're going to pop up. You'll be using them every day. Yeah. Okay. Well, now I need to work on formulas. Let me grab the formula app, or now I've got to work on X. Let me go check that out. Or Elements tools, like you guys tools, like other ISV tools that are available. These are going to be the core things that we use. And then that leads me to this next thought, which is, we start coming down to this question of like, what actually is a CRM and what is its purpose, and how do we engage with it to get the results we're looking for? And I start to think that AI and the GPT apps and the style that ChatGPT has, this new UI with chatbots to interface, and Salesforce is going down the same path with Copilot. Like, there's so much changing, so much going on. I think the world's going to look very different to us in the not so distant future, but definitely in the distant future.
Well, it's less than a year since ChatGPT hit the ground. Less than a year.
Yeah, yeah.
Isn't that? I mean, we've gone from, oh wow, it can write a story for me, or it can write this, to no, give it a bunch of information and it will come back and take a view on it, create a bar chart, write the report. Because I think the point is you've niched it down. You're no longer relying on its general knowledge, which is massively biased. It's massively biased towards men, towards white men. We need it to be, and therefore I think the trick is make these apps that you're using narrower scope. As in, oh, I'm about to do this, I'll pick up that particular one. So I'm looking at apps as both public-facing, ones which obviously surfacing the content. We've got 30 years experience of business analysis, 20 years of Salesforce experience. What content, not everything, I'm not just going to dump everything in, but actually let's curate and work out what's the really good stuff that's worth putting into an app of the specific. So like Centre of Excellence would be a good idea. There's a Centre of Excellence GPT I've created, but now the work is to take all the transcriptions from all the Centre of Excellence round tables we did and all that really good content, so it genuinely can answer those questions. So that's externally facing. But we're also building some internally facing ones to enable our teams to do a better job. So like from a marketing perspective, writing case studies. Well, we know what great case studies look like. We know what the layout should look like. If we make sure that it's got our style guide, our tone of voice, some of the terminology it uses, if you just let it loose, is horrible. But actually, could we get it to take a massive transcript from a customer interview and distill it down and give us the first cut based on a standard structure, standard tone of voice, the way we want it to appear, and then we can work from there. Not the final results, but actually at least it's done some of the analysis work. It's thought about all those random comments that came in the interview, and it's now put them into some sort of structure.
So what makes all of this possible? It's that publicly visible information. That's how we trained the original that's how OpenAI trained the original GPTs.
But that's the problem. That has massive biases associated with because of the volume of data.
Yeah.
And it's also like, it's interesting. I read The Economist, and The Economist is a really well-written magazine. It's like the equivalent of a Time magazine for Europe. And it's interesting. You read any of the leaders, and you go, "Oh, that's interesting." But if you really know a topic, you go, "Yeah, that's about 80% right." But actually, you've missed the nuances. And I think that's the problem with ChatGPT. Is it's about right, but it's genericizing everything, if that's a word. It's not getting into specifics you really need. But if you then take real world knowledge and then you add into it like a ton of data about what best practice looks like, that's where the magic happens.
Totally agree. On the data topic of that massive data, does it make you question a little bit about publicizing information now as we move forward in this sort of new world? There's always been this sort of idea that when you make information public, it's just out there, it could be copied and it's there forever. But now with AI and GPTs, especially the GPT apps, anybody could grab anything of yours potentially and then infuse it into their own model and do whatever they want with it. And no one would, it's just gone. It's just there. It's being used. You're not going to find it. You're not going to know. It's all public. It's a really strange phenomenon. So, and I don't know, it makes me think a little bit now about how, what I publish, and whatever the thing I publish is going to be the tone of my voice, forever memorialized inside of an AI bot somewhere, potentially.
It's interesting. I mean, I had a conversation with Vernon Keenan, who's Salesforce DevOps Net, yesterday about should we not publish? Should we go, this content is a book I was about to write, but I'm not publishing it. It's now only available through the app. And his view was, right, it's another distribution channel. The other thing is, very few people make money out of writing books. I mean, it's like death, wizards. But that's, I mean, you think about all the that people get rid of. But business books don't tend to make very much money. The reason you write a business book is it raises your profile, it gets you better consulting gigs, it gets you on the speaking circuit. It's a profile raiser. And you may make some money, but someone might go, well, I've seen the chatbot, now I want to write the book, read the book. I'm at the moment, I think of it as a distribution channel. Now, clearly you've got all the AI force training. I wouldn't go, that's all available, because there are training courses that people should attend. But clearly the early training course, the starter training courses you've made free so people can get started. The more detailed ones, there's value to them, so therefore people will spend money. I think if you're a content creator, then you got to work out what's behind a firewall and people will spend money on. But if it's but also what have you got that actually is really going to build the profile? Because the thing about these GPTs is that a GPT created by someone and who simply connects it to the internet is of limited value. If they have no knowledge that they can add on top of it, it's no better than ChatGPT.
Sure.
So I think we're going to start looking at, okay, this is a great GPT, okay, but let's look at the quality of the results I'm getting out of it. Let's look at who created it. Okay, they know their topic. Okay, good. Almost like I will read that book because it's because someone knows what they're doing. It's almost that. So I think there's the time, actually, I can feel a list coming on. I think there's a directory of GPT apps where people can start to rate them, but you can look at the credibility of them and you can rate them. But then I think there's another interesting step from there, which is if I've created this GPT, I know which prompts work with it because I know how to prompt it. If I know the topic, I know how to ask the questions of it. So we need to be able to provide a series of prompts to help people start to use these GPTs.
And you can build that in, right? In the way that it's structured right now, you can build in certain I don't know what they're called, actions or prompts to get people going.
There are 4. You can put more than you can put a number, but it surfaces the first 4, but they're relatively short. And if you think about good prompts, we've talked about this before on previous events, they need to be longer. So I think the way I'm thinking is actually a directory of apps, and then every app has a series of prompts that you can then use and rate whether they're good or not, and the top ones bubble to the top.
What I really like is this idea that there's, say, 25 to 50 different, like, really quality Salesforce GPT apps that are hanging out there. But somebody goes in and does the API work to build an actual platform that you can then use, so almost like it pulls information from all the different, like it's an intermediary. So here I'm asking a question and the intermediary knows the benefits and drawbacks of each different GPT app, and it goes out and it uses the right one and it brings you back the information you need. And that's the kind of world that I want to live in, because what a headache.
That's where LangChain was going with agents, and GPT putting that into agents. All you're doing is just abstracting that upper level and going rather than what it knows, but actually like give it a whole series of GPT apps, as in a set of minions. Off you go. You go find the answer.
Yes, each one is a worker, and it's infused with the best information for its work, its job. And I think this does lend into that story of creating that autonomous agent network. And then I think at some point, if you give that, the sole person that's responsible, that's sort of representing you, managing all the other agents, if you give that person the ability to actually make changes to your org, well, now all of a sudden you've got an autonomous agent managing your org. And I don't know, how far away are we off from something like that? Because honestly, it doesn't feel like we're too far away as we step forward. Within a decade.
Within a decade, yeah. But I think in terms of people's, the way that people's orgs are documented and structured and architected, I mean, that's just that we go nightmare at the moment. I think, if you if you started today, you went, right, I'm just about to implement a brand new org, and you started knowing what the future looks like, absolutely. You'd spend a lot more time on documentation, you'd spend a lot more time on architecture.
Oh, for sure.
You'd think about things in different ways. Let's go back to a point, which is, you've talked about all these GPTs being created, but if there's no revenue model, I mean, there's a limit to how much people are going to do out of the goodness of their heart, just because. Or I mean, we're excited. We're playing with this. I spent time on Sunday doing this because I was interested, but that's not a business model. And I know that OpenAI said there's a GPT store, but I mean the barrier to entry is kind of zero.
For
So
now, for now. Well, that's what they'll do. The store's free, or it's free to go in and do all this. It's free to do the work. I mean, I guess what do you have to have premium to actually use the bots right now? I think that's the only thing you have
yeah, so
to,
that's
or maybe
okay.
some
That's great. That's a revenue stream for OpenAI. But we
for them. Yeah. Well, so what's going to happen? There's this flurry. Of course, there's over like thousands and thousands of apps that are being developed and deployed, even if they're garbage. But what's going to happen is they start to get rated. The best ones blow to the top, and some people actually do create great stuff for free, which is amazing for the world. And so those get rated. People go and use them, and then they're going to unlock the monetization, which is whatever the revenue share is. Like, okay, well now we're going to revenue share out of the $20 a month. You're going to get X dollars. Now you've got potentially $10 a month from every user across the base for this app, and now all of a sudden there's a whole market full of people who are willing to jump in, and this GPT app building becomes a new job, a new way to work and build and impact people and companies all over the place. And I want to talk about people because us, like as Salesforce professionals, coming into this, watching this sort of app store get developed and deployed. You put out some links, you put out some apps. I'm going to obviously go through and start curating these apps and try to find the good ones and talk about them. But this is the challenge that everyone's going to have. It's like, okay, well, what app do I use, and what do I use it for, and what's it good at, and what's it rated? And there's a lot of legwork there. So I think a lot of people, unfortunately, are going to be on the sidelines, like they have been for quite some time with AI. Maybe they'll dabble a little bit, but it won't do exactly what they think it's supposed to do, and so they kind of wait. But I think that's the big challenge that we're going to have with these apps is we'll be overwhelmed with how many there are. We'll be underwhelmed with the performance in general, most likely. And it will be challenging to find the right one for the right job at the right time. And so think about it too. If the app isn't going to help you, if you're not exactly sure how it's going to help you and how it's going to help you do something better or smarter in the real world, it's a really dry interface. When you get in there, you're just, you ask a question, you get text back and you have to read through it. And maybe you go do something and come back and try again. So it's a very dry, sort of boring interface. And so I don't think there's going to be this explosion like we think there will be from a user standpoint right up front, although I could be totally wrong. But if the apps are really good, if someone creates a really good app that people love and it gets highly rated, I think it will be used widely, very quickly, much like ChatGPT was when it started rolling out. And then eventually, as this,
you just said if it's good, good means okay, you've given me some prompts to get me started. The results coming back out of those prompts are what I expected. And I think it's about narrowing the scope to start with. I'd love an expense one. The one that goes through my expenses and works out what I should be claiming and what I've forgotten.
Oh my gosh. I know.
The stuff it's very narrow scope, it's managing your expenses, but it doesn't need to do any more than that. It doesn't need to book. It doesn't need to pick restaurants for me. It just needs to go, there's a bunch of receipts here. I've dealt with them, but by the way, I can't find. You must somehow have got to the airport, but I can't find an airport. Did you get the bus? Did you drive? What did you do? I've missed something.
So right after we get off this call, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go. I use Mint for personal finances. I'm going to download the transactions and upload it as a CSV and just start asking questions about my personal finance history. What's my trajectory? Where am I headed here?
Do I need to know about this yet? And the answer is, well, of course. Sure, wait a minute. Is this still technology or is this an application yet? Okay, are you getting excited because it's a platform and stuff's possible, or has it landed to a point where people can use it? And therefore, I need to know about it because actually I'll need to use it in my daily life. I think I sense we're still at the technology bit, but the problem is it keeps moving. Just when we thought we understood it, it's moved on again.
The tech just keeps getting better so quickly before we're able to adapt and like get used to the current state of it. I think there's going to be a lot of catch up to do as the bar gets raised higher and higher and higher. We're just almost racing to, first of all, just understand what's all happening, do the testing, have some fun, be excited, talk about it, but then do the implementation, get used to it in our regular everyday lives and in our work lives and our business processes. there's a lot of catch up that's going to happen. I think even just the simple thing of code interpreter, being able to upload a file, like a file with data, and then start talking to your data. That's a brand new concept. Most people still haven't even done that, but that's been around for, I don't know, code interpreter. It's been a while now. It's been several months. So
But I think the people who are going to gain most of this at the moment are the software vendors, the ISVs. I mean, I think from an Elements perspective, the stuff we don't need to build. And yeah, we've got a great process mapping tool, but actually people map in other things. They map in Lucidchart, they map in Visio, they map in PowerPoint, Draw.io. And people say, can you build me we really want to use Elements because of the capability, but can you build an import? And the answer is, oh, it's going to be really hard. And we've had a couple of goes at it. The other one was, if I do a sketch on a whiteboard, can you import that? And we had a go about a couple of years ago, but the technology wasn't there. About 6 months ago, we still wasn't quite there. Now it is. Now it is. You can take a
let's dig into this. I want to hear, because I think everyone needs to hear this.
So you can take a photograph of, or take a screenshot of a say a Lucidchart diagram, or even a sketch, like boxes and lines on a whiteboard, and give it, and it then the AI capabilities, some of the stuff you can now call, it will then turn that into, it will interpret that and then turn it into text, which will then turn into JSON, and we have a JSON importer. So I know it's not here, it's not released yet, but what would have been man months of work,
right?
Man days of work, because we've already got a JSON interface, and this will pump this stuff out of JSON. But not only will it do that, it will also go, this looks like it's a process for reconciling accounts. And I think you've got some processes missing. So it's not just looking at the diagram. It's now looking at going, I kind of know what this is meant to be doing, but I don't think this is right. Have you thought about this? And as it went along, it started changing some of the stuff to go, yeah, that was an IT process, I think, one we looked at. And it turned into not raise ticket, but raise IT ticket, and actually started to change as the text as well. Because we went, yeah, I know how this is meant to work. So it's not, it genuinely is your co-pilot. It's sitting alongside you going, don't, I got this covered. I'll import it. I'll have a look at it as we go through. You take it from here. So by no means is it 100% there. Because you've still got to take it the last sort of mile, but also the quality often of the stuff that's been drawn is not very good. So having the co-pilot to go, that kind of isn't a very well drawn process, because the person who created it wasn't thinking properly about what the process was. So it obviously can't fix all of that, but it's doing quite a good job of helping you get started. So we man months of building an import facility, done, taken care of. Yeah, we've got a bit of code to do just to get it in, but
who cares, right? It's crossing over that chasm, going from 0 to 80% in what would have taken months, but now is days, and then you get to take it across the final 20 and have the deliverable. So productivity improvement. But I want to lean into this idea, because this is what I was thinking a lot about this morning too, with the apps in general. This idea that you can go from idea. So once you have an idea, an aha, like, oh, I have an idea, to actual executable in the real world results. The time it takes to do that is being shortened. And every time the tech improves a little bit, it gets shortened again and shortened again. And so now, one of the things early on was you had Mid-Journey and these, Stable Diffusion creating images over here, and you had text generation way over here, and now we're merging these things together. And so again, you can just like 2x your ability to like generate things that include both now all of a sudden. So to go from, this is what's blowing my mind, this is why I'm spending a lot of time thinking about this, to go from idea, like, oh, I have an idea, to actual real world execution with AI strung in the middle across your entire process of ideating and curating and fine-tuning and bringing it all the way down to the final deliverable. This is the process where I am going to be extremely focused in on for several months. And I am very excited to be using GPT apps, Chat GPT, other tools, like whatever I can get my hands on to do that and streamline this process. I think others should be looking at that as well. How do I go from idea to execution? And how do I figure out the right process to do that as fast as possible using this AI? You're doing it there, taking a picture of the whiteboard.
I think spinning up I don't know, I've got an XYZ idea, I'm going to turn it into a GPT. Number one, yeah, it needs a lot more, it needs something to make it valuable. Number two, I'm not sure what the revenue stream is. So I think it's idea to prototype, idea to, oh, can this land? Is this interesting? Where's it going? I think you're still quite a long way from a finished product which actually will has a revenue stream or a business model or some longevity to it.
Yeah. Yeah, I'll say anyone who's looking to build these GPT apps, like don't go into it thinking you're going to make a lot of money unless you're doing two things. You're solving problems, like you've got to actually solve problems for people to want to use it, and it's got to be good. It's got to give good responses. It's got to give responses that are actually usable. People can take that and go out into the real world and do something with it. It's got to be actually problem solving. Otherwise, you're just going to build this thing that sits out there on the internet, just like so many other things sit out there on the internet, and just hang out there. Some will play with it, but it won't be before you waste your time. It's got to actually solve someone's problem.
Sounds good.
All right.
All right.
Talk to you soon.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Let's